Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Let me share screen, get us oriented to our conversation. So we are continuing on with Brain Club Greatest Hits 2025. It's our second week of four. The theme will be revisiting tonight. This is again we look back over the Brain Club episodes throughout the year, and we pluck out patterns and themes and revisit them. So tonight we'll be revisiting the theme of learning to rest. For many neurodivergent people, particularly those with who also have chronic illness, rest can often feel impossible. And I think, after a lifetime being told to push through, suck it up, keep up, basically being required to mask to survive, we often deny our brains and our body's needs. And so tonight we'll be exploring that theme of what it means to learn to rest. Not as a luxury and not as something we have to earn, but something that we need and that can look very different for different people. Before we begin, closed captions are enabled. You just have to toggle them on if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. So if you're new to Brain Club and you're new to All Brains Belong, welcome. We are a nonprofit organization supporting the health and belonging of people with all types of brains, and we do that through medical care, social connection, employment support, and community education like this. So you are invited to be part of what we're doing here and be part of our community. Brain Club is our education program where we demonstrate our approach to neuro-inclusive culture for purposes of shifting broader community awareness of the issues of concern and importance to our community, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And the idea is then you all carry this forth into the rest of your lives, and that's how culture change happens. Everybody's welcome here at Brain Club. Brain Club's for neurodivergent people, people who support neurodivergent people, people who are exploring whether or not they are neurodivergent and claim that identity, and really anyone with any type of brain who wants to learn about neuro-inclusive culture. This is a place where we provide education and information about neurodiversity and model new ways of being in community, and we do that through panels and guest speakers and book chats to provide a way of better understanding some neurodivergent experiences through the stories of our presenters. And for many, this is a way to feel less alone. It's a place where we often criticize systems or features of systems that make it difficult for people to get their needs met, and we bright spot alternatives. This is not the right place for medical advice or addressing personal questions or individual needs, or it's not a support group, not a place to process individual emotional experiences or address individualized requests. It's also not a place where we criticize individuals or groups of individuals. You are welcome to participate however you're most comfortable. That's what the chat window looks like. You're welcome to use it. A portion of tonight will be a series of pre-recorded panels, and while that video is playing, you're welcome to use the chat as we go about the content of the panel. You're welcome to share how what a panelist says impacts you. You're welcome to validate others' comments or ask questions. We just ask if you're going to use the chat that you use the big box in like the main window, as opposed to the reply threads, which bounce the chat up and down and make it hard for lots of brains to keep up with, and certainly make it hard for our staff to keep up with to respond to questions and comments. Thank you for using the big box. As I mentioned, there's multiple ways to participate. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to walk around or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks. During our discussion portion of tonight, you're welcome to use mouth words or the chat. You also don't have to. Observation is a valid form of participation at Brain Club and all our programs. And in addition to affirming all aspects of identity, we think about prioritizing the group's collective needs over that of any individual. So we invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like. For some of you, you're revisiting old Brain Clubs. For some of you, this is the first time you're seeing it. So if there's anything that's new or unfamiliar, just ask in the chat and we can point you to resources. If it's your first time at Brain Club, welcome. Keep coming back. It might take a couple times to figure it out. So glad you're here. And Lizzie's going to put some logistics questions covered in frequently asked questions in the chat. Thank you to our sponsors for tonight's Brain Club, Encore Renewable Energy, and Limelight Restoration Services. We are so grateful to our sponsors for supporting not just tonight's Brain Club, but Brain Clubs throughout the month. A couple of announcements before we get going. As some of you heard last week, we kicked off our You're Not Alone campaign. This is our end of year operational campaign to raise awareness about our mission, as well as to raise funds to support free public community programs like Brain Club. So your gift to the campaign, if you have capacity, supports creating free educational content all year long, compensating panelists who share their lived expertise with us, as well as compensating our community steering committee. So thank you all for your support. Lizzie's going to put some links in the chat. Oh, you already did. Thank you. Thank you for supporting Brain Club. Next announcement, we have our 4th annual virtual New Year's Eve celebration coming up on December 31st. It's free. We've got all kinds of activities, including a special New Year's Eve Brain Club and live music performances from Marcy Hernandez, Hassan Ahmed, and Todd Jeffrey. We've got breakout rooms with all different types of activities. We've got like parallel play crafting and dance party and some other things going on. And there's also a raffle with some awesome prizes. So we hope that you'll join us on New Year's Eve. And that link is in the chat. Speaking of New Year's Eve, our New Year's Eve Brain Club's theme is what did you come to accept or learn about your brain this year? And we invite you all to participate. So deadline of this Saturday so that I can then make the video. Love for you to participate, sending like 30 seconds to a minute or so, selfie videos to new-years@allbrainsbelong.org. You get another week. We extended this for a week. What did you come to accept about your brain? What did you come to learn about your brain? And we're going to pool those all together for Community Brain Club. We are not going to record Community Brain Club. It's not going to be something that we like have on YouTube or anything like that. It's not going to be like the way that we usually do Brain Club. So it's just for the attendees to share together. So we invite you to participate. All right, so here we go. Brain Club Greatest Hits. So these are our 4 themes of the series, and tonight we'll be looking at learning to rest. So what this is going to look like, I've got a couple of slides, and then we're going to watch a compilation of 4 past Brain Club community panels that'll run about 24 minutes, and we'll have some time for discussion. So rest. Why is it hard to rest for lots of neurodivergent people? Well, it's a lifetime of receiving messages to the contrary. A lot of people have grown up being told that you're not trying hard enough, you're being lazy, you're not motivated, there's something defective and deficient about you. It makes it hard to trust that rest is a legitimate need, despite it being so. Often, many neurodivergent people have nervous systems that stay on high alert to threat that make slowing down uncomfortable. And rest doesn't, at least rest as one might assume rest looks like, doesn't actually feel restful. And years of masking, pushing through symptoms, and performing creates the belief that we must stay productive. We get the messages that your value comes from what you produce and what you do. And so not doing feels bad. And when rest does not consistently feel better, it doesn't consistently reduce pain or fatigue or overwhelm, because we don't necessarily have a lens of understanding our access needs and what we need for full and meaningful participation in our lives, it makes it hard to believe that rest will help. So we avoid it. For those who have not read Rest is Resistance, a manifesto by Tricia Hersey, Tricia Hersey writes that rest is about stepping out of systems that keep us exhausted and harm us. Lizzie, if you could put a link to this book in the chat, it's a really powerful read or listen. But we're going to explore what some of our community members have to say about this and what their journey has been in exploring rest as resistance and what this has looked like for them. Tonight we're going to be revisiting four past brain clubs from this year. And as we get to these segments, I'll put links in the chat to the originals if you want to go back and watch the originals, the long form of each of them. And with that, thank you to our panelists, Rai Repaloki, Simone Arnold, Aspen Cupper, Jay Green, Caitlin Blow, Olivia Tyler, Joe Grabowski, Bruno Schweiner, Weaver Goldsmith, Summer Stelter, and Lizzie Perrette. All right, here we go. I gotta stop share and reshare with the sound. Here we go.
I started hearing about rest as resistance, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago when that was first started to be a thing. I heard about it first in the beginnings of the Black Lives Matter movement as dealing with, racial forms of microaggressions and things like that in different communities. So that was sort of where I first started to really hear about rest being an act of resistance um, and being an important piece of healing trauma.
Like from your perspective, like what are the sociocultural barriers to rest?
The biggest one is capitalism. And in like its many facets, like the way we internalize productivity as like a virtue in a capitalist society. Um, and then also the pressures created by capitalism, especially where we're at right now, where a lot of people are having to work two, three jobs in order to meet their most basic needs, which means often there's literally our society doesn't give time for rest, and this shows up in like so many different ways. Even as like a counselor going through a counselor education program, they talk about self-care, they talk about rest being a thing, and yet we never identify the fact that there are structural issues that stop that process.
Not getting down on myself for not doing something productive, because a lot of the times productivity is equated with something that can be useful to a whole group instead of something that's just useful to you.
I think it comes with a lot of shame and guilt. And I think even within the communities who are starting to talk about that as an act of resistance and self-care and community care, mutual aid, rest as mutual aid, um, that in those communities there was still a reckoning about the internalized shame of productivity, of um, we should be able to go 95 miles an hour and not go the speed that we need to on any given day based on mitochondria ability to create extra energy in any given moment in time. And I think also emotional health and just um, like, you know, having a bad day at school or having a bad day at work, can cause, a direct impact to your ability to do the next thing when you get home or afterwards. Um, and I think that there is like that word laziness, um, I think that that's a really hard message to delete or erase out of our own brains.
I think that like it's so hard to unlearn this idea that like to be of value, you have to produce something, you have to be productive, or else like our society says that like if you're not productive, then what are you? Like you're worthless.
Constant messaging from childhood that to succeed is to succeed as an individual. Um, and then, yeah, I think that really contributes a lot to sort of the feelings of internalized ableism. For me, that um, so you've got the external ableism of like you have to work full time to earn enough to pay rent and feed yourself. And even then, there are, a lot of jobs don't even pay enough to make full-time work a source of a livable wage. So there's that external ableism, and then there's sort of the internalized things, which for me shows up as like, oh, I should be able to do this.
And the other part is like examining the narratives about how they believe things should be, right? So I just did this recently where I was like, tell me about all of the narratives you have around like adulting, right? And
Which is
they like
internalized ableism, executive
Mhm.
functioning, glorified, like all that.
absolutely. So they're like, well, I have to do this and this, and there's like that perfectionism, right, which is a symptom of white supremacy culture,
1000%.
comes out. And so we have to really shift like, what does it look like to adult as a neurodivergent person?
If you feel you're forced to to be busy, to be productive, and you don't allow yourself moments to just um, remember that you're in a body that has needs, then obviously you may end up crashing and burning in ways that can be irreversible.
I tried really hard. I pushed really hard. I ultimately crashed really hard.
Losing the things that I used to draw a lot of self-worth from, a lot of athletic achievements, a lot of volunteer work, in-person volunteer work, things like that.
A really messy, mushy, loopy kind of journey.
Yeah, I love what you said about this being sort of an identity change, because I'm really used to defining my identity along the lines of like I'm a graduate student, I'm a policy analyst, I'm a road cyclist, I'm a rock climber, I'm these very active sort of verby um, identities that are specifically related to a lot of high energy, high activity kind of things. So now I get to figure out I got to figure out some new things that I can do to some new labels and some new things. It's really hard. I think one of the hardest things has been when I meet new people and they ask like, "Oh, what do you do?" Because they usually mean like, "What do you do for work?" And I'm like, "I'm not working right now. I'm taking time to recover from chronic illness." And I have a cat who I love, who I take care of, who I play with. I do a lot of cross stitching, embroidery, watch video essays about media critique on YouTube. Like I have to find the things that, and it's an interesting thing to. I feel like I'm shifting my own perspective, and I hope that I'm also shifting other people's perspectives by um, maybe. I don't want to like preach at them like, well, what you just said is reflects the ableism in our society where people are defined by work. I want to just be like, well, actually, I'm not working, and here's what I'm doing to keep myself occupied and find joy instead.
I don't think it's possible to have patient-centered care if you're not taking care of your staff, because they don't have the bandwidth, or they'll have the bandwidth for a certain amount of time and then they're in burnout and they're run on empty, and it's hard to take care of your people when you're not taking care of your staff. So
Totally. And like I remember in traditional healthcare, there was this narrative, like people were talking about how like, to heal a person, you must be a person and work-life balance and mindfulness. And it was all like you as the individual, you need to do self-care and like then you can be a good clinician. It's like the system is actively hurting me right now.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about access needs and how I feel like our team and our model, that's a pretty centralized focus of where we start about like what are our team's access needs, what are our providers' access needs, the staff's access needs, and then Also, we look at what our patients' access needs and getting feedback from them. We're kind of building this ship all together, like with all of our brains working together and also working through conflicting access needs and things like that. I don't think that the traditional models really start in that spot. And yeah. And also we look at our team and realize that it's not all about productivity and just grinding yourself down every day, that isn't sustainable. So what system can we create for the long term for everyone?
And now, like, societally, all of the people who are marginalized because of disability, plus all the other aspects of identity, who like are getting the message that you're dispensable. I don't care if you live or die, and let it rip. So, ways of working, we have universal N95 mandates. Like, that's different from traditional healthcare too. Because we care that you don't get COVID when you come for healthcare. We wanted to talk about this idea that when you are living in cultures where people don't get it, that is isolating, and that has an impact on health. What's been your experience of that?
So I kind of have like two ways of thinking of this. The more direct answer to your question is like it's gotten a lot better recently because I have more friends who understand. As we get into summer, it's probably going to get worse again. Because I'm probably going to get a lot of invites to like do things outdoors and go on hikes and stuff like that. I feel like since I have made friends who understand, or at the very least are aware enough to ask if they're not sure, it's gotten a lot better. But I still have one person in my life who consistently is like, hey, want to go on a walk? Hey, we're going to this event. Do you want to walk there? And I'm just like, bud, and I think the hardest thing for me is in my head, I'm like, is this person forgetting that I'm disabled, which sucks and feels really invalidating, or does this person not believe that I'm disabled?
I do want to say that it's really hard. It's really, really hard to there's a lot of grief, I think, is the right word for it, involved in accepting that I have some limitations right now.
Loneliness can make you and break you at the same time. I was lonely, like deeply and profoundly lonely. But, and I was surrounded by people telling me I shouldn't be who I was. But it was different than being around everybody coming from all angles telling you who you were is wrong and trying to make you tear yourself apart into different identities that were disparate. And I think at that point when I was younger, I internalized that as like, it's better to be lonely than torn apart. That choosing of being myself or trying to fawn and be less of myself, that it was better to be myself than to tear myself apart into pictures of goals that I was never going to meet.
So loneliness was a strategy to reduce harm.
I think on a big level, yeah.
And you carried that with you through most of your life.
Yeah, and still, I think loneliness has been a strategy on a certain level in order to maintain my sense of self, which I think does really relate to my health. That being said, I think it takes its toll. I'm freaking tired. And I'm burnt out, and I can say that easily now. Like when I'm angry about oppression in the world, I'm angry, and I've been holding that back my whole life.
The messaging is that I don't matter,
Yes.
that I am not an important part of whatever you are trying to do.
Yes.
Whether it's hanging out with me, whether it's having an event and being like, sorry, it was the best place we could get. And it's like, cool, okay. Um, so much I could go into with that. But like what the messaging is there is I am not important enough to be considered.
I think loneliness has been a strategy.
So, and I think this idea of I opt out of trying to interact with quote community because community is unsafe. Community is expecting me to not be authentic. I can't safely be authentic. I'm being rejected for all that I am, so I opt out of this. I think that's really common in the All Brains Belong community, which is why I think it's like it feels really radical. Like, why, like, what do you mean I'm gonna like interact with other people? Why would I do that? Other people suck. Anyway, what has been your experience of meeting others in the ABB community?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Really wonderful. I think that all of us have so many things in common and also so many unique things that make us us.
What do you think ABB's role is in supporting neurodivergent people?
I actually think it is the community aspect of it, and that's really where I think most of the like healing and growth happens because you're dealing with folks who have like really complex health things that oftentimes we can through research trace them to like suppressed rage and anger, to like suppressed like trauma that hasn't been like processed, to just like systemic stress and overwhelm. And so the community piece helps reduce the shame because the sharing of narratives is shame reduction, which then means that we can like work through all of the other things.
I think that I get to hear lived experience and lived like tips and tricks. And I get to like connect with people. If I like, I feel like the most valuable part for me has been connecting with people who have similar experiences, who can relate, who can give me their own experience and what has helped for them. And also, like, I know that if I were having a hard day or I was really lonely, I could put that in the chat and someone would show up. Either a voice and like this is the great thing is that like it might not be exactly what I want, but it will be something where it's like I can't come visit you, but I can do a voice chat with you. I can do a video call or like one person from ABB has come to my apartment and helped me change my bed sheets, which was like sounds so small, but I literally can't change my bed sheets by myself. Um, and every month I'm like putting out an ask on my Instagram for like someone to please come help me change my bed sheets. And so to have someone be willing to come do that and there'd be no judgment, and knowing that like, well, I hope they know, but I know that like if they had an ask that I could fill, that I would have their back.
Part of it is the community aspect of it. All Brains Belong, I think, has worked hard to make that grow, and you know, I think it's a really important part of the whole thing. Like at least I'm coming to understand that now. You know, like I've had two community members that, you know, I consider friends that I hang out with now, and it's unbelievable how, you know, how validating it is and comfortable to chat with these people and hang out because you have a shared language and a shared experience. You know, once you've delved into all the brain club topics and have started unlearning all the garbage you got earlier in life, um, like you don't have to put on a mask. You can just be yourself, and um, it feels good.
If everyone is trying to overcome and unlearn all of these things individually, these things cannot be unlearned individually, at least not, I mean, not to say that also as a person new to chronic illness, um, I don't even know what this would be like to not spend my whole day around other people who get it. I have no idea what that would be like. That would, I've never tried.
I think the solution to the sort of individualistic society and the external and internalized ableism is like connect with other people who can validate your experience and say like, hey, you're not alone in this, and find ways to find like fulfillment and contribute in ways that feel meaningful that also don't exhaust you.
Points and knew about the self-advocacy, but I still felt like I had to fight for it, like I had to apologize for it, and I still have to show up in the world for the comfort of others. So All Brains Belong, especially Brain Club, has helped me to become more comfortable in my skin with being who I am, and that I don't quite fit other people's expectations or how they work, but that's okay.
Like people just aren't aware that things can be different, but they just don't know it because they were taught to do it this other way. Like this is the only way, you know, whether it's how they were brought up with their family or from watching TV or, you know, their neighbors, their friends, parents, however we learned it, because that's how we learned stuff. It's really hard to force yourself every single day to live up to something that's not even your expectation. It's someone else's expectation.
And it's hurting you. It's not
Yes.
your expectation, it's someone else's expectation, and it's the way that you were told you had to do
Yes.
it.
That shame and guilt is of an unseen person that you're afraid you're going to be feeling when they're like, oh, you didn't do the dishes, or oh, how come you're so tired after getting home and making all the food and feeding everyone, and now you're not going to hang out with me?
And I think that one of the things that we do together in this community is we are, you know, because we're all in different stages, like we see someone doing something differently and we're like, huh, that's interesting. And then you see other people doing something different, like, huh, that's interesting. And it's at least for me as a member of the community, it gives me permission to do something else.
But watching Mel's journey, Dr. Mel's journey, watching how she modeled behaviors that I'd never seen before. She modeled pacing, and, you know, for months it seemed like she was in the dark way, you know, every time we talked to her, and that was wonderful. I loved it. Like, thank you. We're not hiding. We're just laying down people. People that need to lay down, and like we figured out what we need. I remember feeling like this community is like the underlying drive is like completely eradicating ableism. First in ourselves, but then also like how can we change that systemically? And for me, a lot of that has been just normalizing me. Like I had some interventions that really changed everything, and Sierra just phrased it in a way, well, it just seems like your body likes that, you know, like not like I'm sick or weird or there's something wrong, but like this is what my body needs, and we can do that instead of a model that like tries to force me into a peg that I don't fit into, or a hole I don't fit into. I feel like this model really sees people and takes out the pathology and just how can we
Wow. First off, I want to thank again, I want to put back our slide to thank our panelists for sharing your wisdom. Rai Wepaloki, Simone Arnold, Aspen Cupper, Jay Green, Caitlin Blow, Olivia Tyler, Joe Grabowski, Bruno Schweiner, Weaver Goldsmith, Summer Stelter, Lizzie Perrott. Thank you, everyone. I know it's Spring Club Greatest Hits, and that's the point, but like every single thing that anyone said was just so wise and so profound, and I am so grateful to you all. I'm going to read something in the chat. Sierra says, I think to the point of unlearning, I find it helpful to zoom out and think about advocacy as bigger than specific actions, and that showing up as ourselves in our lives and being true to ourselves in a world that's trying to suppress you is as much advocacy as going out to a protest. Thank you, Sierra. I'd love to hear with our we got about 5 minutes left. Anything else coming up for anyone else? What are you taking away from this discussion of learning to rest? In the chat or out loud? Sierra.
If I could just expand on that point, one thing I really liked about, I think, the end of that presentation was the connection, at least for me, of rest as being accepting yourself and that being required for rest. And really kind of hit me with how I think for so many people, there's that relief of like accepting this is my body, this is my brain, this is my nervous system, like this is how it is. And I think it's often in my experience, often an unexpected relief after kind of fighting against something for so long, and how just that act of acceptance in and of itself is rest in this sense. I love this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. That is so well said. And I think that the other thing that's standing out to me about the end of that compilation is that like it's the community that allows you to make that shift. Like it's the meeting other people who are on the journey of reimagining your lives, that's what allows you to do it, as opposed to like, oh yeah, today I'm just going to decide that I accept my finite capacity as a human being. Like that just doesn't happen. Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, I just love that All Brains Belong is taking on this topic, and I just think it's so incredible and wonderful and really important. And one of the things that just blew me away the other day was this realization. I was reading something, and it was, and it's from the perspective of like the big body me, like the meta me, like I'm resting. But from the perspective of the cells in my body that make life possible, the time that they get to be active is when they turn my brain off and I go to sleep. So it's like this thing that I call rest is like this incredibly active metabolic time in the existence of my body that I don't think of as productive because I'm not achieving anything vis-a-vis the outside world. But on the inside world, like literally things are happening that like no scientist could accomplish and no doctor can achieve. I mean, it's just this amazing thing that this amazing amount of healing and productivity is happening on the inside of me that nobody no human being has the technology to make happen.
Yes. Yes. Just letting that set in. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that like everyone's at different stages of that, of appreciating that. So well said. Thank you, Sarah. Hi, Linnea.
I've really needed to rest here lately, and one of the things that has been kind of shocking to me was to realize just the idea that I can actually allow myself or give myself permission to do the things that sound good to me, and that there are certain commitments I have to a group I'm thinking of, for instance. And if it doesn't feel good to read the book and do the thing, have the conversation they're having, it's really okay to say no, but I'm just like barely getting it, and it feels dangerous. Oh.
It feels dangerous because, like, if you have the kind of brain that derives safety from predictable systems, and there's an approach that you've had over rehearsed for decades of this, of course, doing something different is going to feel like an unpredictable system, which feels like really unsettling, I think, to our nervous systems. And I think that what also comes up for me about what you shared, Linnea, is just the idea of like capacity. When you set a boundary, it's not about like, well, I don't want to do that, or I don't like to do that, although it would be fine to say those things. But you're also talking about capacity. I am beyond capacity to do that thing. I do not have the energy at like a cellular level to go do that thing. And I think that when we can practice setting boundaries based on capacity, then it's not like preference or will or something. And I think that we like do that for each other. We model that for each other. I think I think a lot of people in this community do. And you're like, other people are saying that. Maybe I might think some about that. And really, what do I need right now? And what is my capacity? And I may have hit it. And then I cannot do anything. Kind of like when I try to use my cell phone at 1% battery, it will drop the call. It just will 100% of the time.
I like that language. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, everyone. And yes, I think as Summer says in the chat, we don't need to push through. Letting go can be so transformable. Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part. Oh, I'm going to read Tara's comment. One of my barriers to rest is that I'm forever feeling like I'm behind on so many of life and work things, and I need to work harder to catch up. But I'm realizing that this starts with internalized ableism, right? It's like society has fed that thinking to us from a really early age of like, it is better, it is superior to be able to do the thing, as opposed to it's just neutral. I am beyond my capacity. Olivia says it's growing stronger roots or new roots, which allows us to show up in the larger community with and a stronger sense of self, perhaps allowing advocacy for ourselves and for others in our community. Oh, it's beautiful, Olivia. And I think that really much that connects to the comment that I'm just scrolling up that Angelina says in the chat, first time here, and I love this beautiful community built here, emphasis on community in general. Sometimes I'm asking myself, what does acceptance of self look like? I struggle to understand that sometimes. And I think that's like, I mean, such a astute question. And I think that's the journey. And I think that looks different for everyone. And I think it's a process, and I can only answer for myself. When something happens and my first instinctual interpretation of some kind of breakdown is like, there I go again, messing everything up, as opposed to, yeah, that thing was not offered in a way that works for me. My access needs were not met. Of course there was a breakdown. Like that shift, it's probably the most important shift of my life. And I think that's going to look different for different people. And I think we make that shift together in this community. And so with that, thank you all so much for being part of this conversation and being part of our community. And we look forward to seeing you next week for theme number 3. What is theme number 3? I'm beyond capacity to memorize our themes. Finding community. Of course, that would be one of our themes. Thank you all so much. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.